When you were talking about, sorry about that, wages before,
Yeah.
and whoever's response it was like, you can't believe what they're asking for. Like, the generation coming up is just a different animal, I think. I just shouldn't say it like that, but there's a different mindset. They've been through different things. They've seen results from the generations before them, and it's just, there's a different mindset now. That the world has changed dramatically in the last, 5-10 years. And I think it's just different now. And I think that's a different, there's a not a conflict, but a different, maybe a breakdown in perception, where the doctors and the practice owners and managers who have been in it for 10, 20 years, and the younger ones coming in and asking for whatever salary or hourly wage that they're asking that they think they deserve or should be owed right off the bat, is just, it's different. And I can see how there would be some level of
conflict,
or like if the owner sees that as like an audacious request or something along those lines. But
what they call it, sense of entitlement.
Yeah. But there's also something to be said for people like understanding that they're bringing a trade to the table, and if you know that they're actually going to work hard and be of value to the practice and an asset, then absolutely they're worth it.
I can edit any time, so like anything, we're good to go. So Amanda, we haven't talked in a while.
No, it's been a bit.
Right?
What's happened?
Yeah. It's such a great feeling to do this interview podcast, because I try to bring people that I really, really enjoy.
Oh.
And I enjoy talking and I enjoy learning. I have this curiosity. How did this happen? How is Amanda running 15 or 16 or like who knows how many offices now? And how did you even get there? But it's like, I always think about, I should keep in touch with you more often. Like, I have your number. I just texted you this morning, right? Or just now. And I'm like, why didn't I do this in the last 24 months? I don't know. So like, I'm glad that we're doing podcasts, and it's more probably for me than for anybody else, because I just want to catch up with you.
Extremely informative, like to have the dialogue and ask questions. Like, yeah. So it's cool. I'm glad you're doing it.
Yeah. How you been?
Oh, good. I just got a message. We did a build out. So we have three practices in Illinois now. And I've added 2 of them to Zen, but it's been a very slow transition, even slower than someone like if an orthodontist in Wisconsin retires and we've taken over. Like, it's just been trying to navigate a little bit differently with these practices, but it's been good as far as I know. Like, they are actually moving. Today's moving day from the old location to a new location. So they're getting a new suite to work out of. So that should be nice for them, but it's a lot. It's stressful.
Yeah. And for people who are curious about you, you are, what's your official role with Bubon Orthodontics?
Facility and supply manager.
Okay.
And then I do some treatment coordinating. Also, I take consultations on like a remote basis. So I'm never in the office when the clinic is open anymore. That probably, I think that changed maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. But yeah, it's just, I feel like every 6 or 8 months something changes in the practice, and get a roll with it. But
normal. Yeah. And your role changes. Yeah. Yeah. All of a sudden you're doing all the extra stuff like treatment plan coordination or setting up new vendors or like you name it.
Yeah. And actually that's something I need to work on a little bit later, is I've got to update the new shipping address in a bunch of different accounts, but yeah.
Got it.
Good time.
So how did you start? Like, did you ever imagine that this is going to be your role when you started your career?
Never. Ever in a million years. The only reason I'm in dental is because in high school, I knew I wanted to be in like the medical field of some capacity. And I did like a co-op my senior year. So I went to school for a couple hours, and then I went to a job that I got high school credit for. I don't even know if they still do that. That was so long ago. But the job that
they probably should do that.
Yeah, it was a really good experience. And I mean, it's probably why it changed my life, clearly. But the only reason I'm in the dental field is because my teacher got me a job as like a lab and sterilization tech in a dental office. So that was my high school co-op job. And then as soon as I graduated, I went to school for massage therapy because I thought I was going to be like I thought I would raise a family, and massage therapy would be a good like side gig to bring in money and also like help people and, be in the health field in some capacity. And then life didn't happen the way I planned it, as it doesn't for most.
Right, which is good.
Yeah. I graduated from massage school. Then I went and did some other schooling for 3 years, graduated from that, and then came back and got a job as a dental assistant because I needed to pay my bills. And that was almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you got you said what is it called? Co-ed?
Co-op. I don't
Co-op?
even remember what it stands for.
Yeah. When you got the co-op, you in high school, and you got the co-op at the dental office to be the sterilization tech. Was it cool back then?
No. I don't think so. It was a small office. There were, I think, 3 or 4 doctors that worked in this little practice, but it was tiny. Like the front desk lady, Cam, she'd been there for 15 years. Everybody knew her.
God,
it was
wow.
kind of like it's a bigger city, but a small town feel. And it was just kind of, what do you want to do now, Amanda? Okay, go file these files, or like go take care of the instruments, or, it was just something that got my foot in the door, got me some experience to understand like how practice works, meeting the doctors, actually started assisting then too, because somebody called in sick one day and they're like, hey, can you hand these instruments over to this doctor? Yeah. So it was a lot of just filling in and helping out and learning what's needed and how things go. But it was a great starting point. And then I worked as a pedodontic assistant for a few years at a big corporate practice. So that was 1 doctor, and then there was 3 assistants, and us assistants took care of like which this is somewhat controversial, but we did the cleanings for the little 3 to 13-year-olds. And then we assisted when he was doing the operatory procedures. And then I was having coffee with a friend, and my now boss happened to walk in. And my friend said, hey, we're hiring, you should apply. So I applied, and that was over 15 years ago. So that's how I happened upon this job at the orthodontic practice I'm at now.
Wow.
It was all very
15 years ago.
Yeah. Yep.
That's amazing. And then you started as a dental assistant, or you already started as something else?
I did. I started as an assistant in the clinic at Bubon, at my practice. I don't know if we're saying names or not.
Yeah, we are. We're saying anything.
So, I started in the clinic, and I always just have like if there's a need, I can try to help or do whatever, so I offered to help do some of the ordering it had to have been within the first year. I started in 2007. And then, shortly after that, the girl that was doing the ordering said she was happy to pass it on, and I started doing it. And that was, in our practice, so orthodontics, there's probably some locations that can get all of their supplies from one vendor, but I don't know if it's the way the original person that did the ordering kind of set things up, but we have probably different 20 different vendors that we get our supplies from.
Right.
So that was like just learning all that. And then this one you have to email, this one you call your orders in, this one has an online store you can log in and order online, like just all the different ways of actually getting your supplies. And that's why I think I actually heard about Zen before the shutdown and the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to remember when it was. And my boss, and this is, I don't know if this is typical of most doctors. Fortunately, he's somewhat of a pushover, where if I ask enough and like build enough value into what I'm trying to get him to buy, he'll see like that's a really good thing, or really, so when I first asked, he's like, no, I don't think so, not right now. And then I talked to him like over a while later, and then we grew even more. And I think you must have reached out to me again. And then I was like, hey, Dr. B, this would be really useful. It would really be efficient for my time and getting things done. And now that we've got other people on board, like in our team, it would be a really good way of not only keeping in touch with each other, but making sure we're on the same page. And he finally bought it and bought in. And we have, I think, added, did we start with 12 and now we're up to 15? I don't remember now. Something like that.
You did 12. Yeah. I think you started 12. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, that was fantastic.
It's been a game changer.
But I'm just curious. When you took over the ordering, it seems like you have this attitude of like, let's just give it a try, right? Yeah. Or am I wrong?
I mean, you just learn as you go. Like hey, we need this. Where do I get it? And then I would contact whoever that supply was from, make an introduction. A lot of times they try to get more business. So if I can negotiate a price or something like that, I just learned as I went and made relationships. Yeah. And, if I see a lot of times people approach me, or if I see something online, I can make an inquiry, and you just figure it out as you get information,
Right. Do you remember the first time you had to negotiate a price with a vendor?
Not the first time.
Like, were you nervous? That's what I'm trying to get to.
A little bit. I think I probably was like nervous, but kind of like, I don't know. My grandma was like a rummager. Like she even used it as like a side hustle growing up, as like when she was, she's passed since, but her and my grandpa would have rummages every weekend. And so negotiating fees and seeing them like, hey, would you take this for that? Or if I do this, like, I just kind of grew up around it. So that was, I guess, a little bit more of a natural behavior. And you take what you can get. I don't ever want to be like pushy, or sometimes you can be rude by asking for something, and because it's a value of a thing, so you don't want to be rude, but you also want to like be responsible with money. And even though it's not my money, like I want to do.
But you treat it as your own.
Yeah. Yeah. On some level. Yeah.
And so how would you recommend people who are starting? Like if somebody listens and she's in charge of ordering, and for a lot of people, like I'm an immigrant, I can say this thing, like it's just not natural for a lot of people born here to ask for a discount, or ask for a better price. It's just not a thing you do in America, I feel like. So how would you do that? How would you recommend someone negotiate in the right way?
Let me just see if I can you hear my dog? She's like crying.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. The dog's in the show.
She can be
Can we see her?
Needy. I'm sorry. You want to see her? I just try to cover her up with a blanket.
No, as long as it's not going to disturb her, but it'd be cool to see her. Look at her. Look at her. Podcast with the pets. What's her name?
That's my little Lily.
Lily.
We got her a little more than a year ago from a humane society. Usually if I put a blanket over her, she's kind of like a bird and she'll go asleep.
Okay, that's good.
She might be a little needy. I guess the best advice that I could give would be just to navigate slowly and ask questions. Especially if it's a relationship, like my Dynaflex rep, her and I have known each other at least a decade now, and we joke, like we talk about our private lives and email and things like trips we're going on or whatever. But if it's a newer relationship, you could just ask try to keeping respect in mind. Like, hey, do you guys ever negotiate prices? Are you able to negotiate bigger ticket items? Could we create maybe like some sort of formulary considering, and keep in mind, it's a funny balance to understand, like they have something you need. Like it's a supply that you need for the function of your practice, but you're also, I have 15 locations and I'm a pretty high high level purchaser in some regards. Like we're not the biggest of big, but we've got a substantial amount of supply ordering that we bring to the table. So you kind of want to, I don't know, I'm putting all my cards on the table. I don't know. I think it's a partnership and you're both looking out for each other's best interests. And I think if that's a mutual understanding, then it's a good way to approach, say, hey, like, I'd love to do business with you. I'm trying to be responsible with what I have. Is there any way that we can make some sort of agreement where we could do either some sort of flat discounted rate, or if you want me to negotiate like part for part or something along those lines, then just open a communication and see how they respond. A lot of times they'll already have some sort of internal like setup. Like if you have this many practices, this is the discount you get. If you order this much, this is the discount you can get. So it's oftentimes already set up and you just need to kind of open the door, you know?
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say like, you probably, as a procurement person or purchasing person, you don't want to deal with this on an ongoing basis.
Well, yeah,
right?
You're right.
You're like,
it is a lot.
Yeah. And so that's where it becomes the two-way partnership is you have something that I need and I have something that you need. You have the product, I have the money. Let's make it work where mutually we don't have to come back to this in a year or two or like every month. And so I feel like that's a good way to approach it for a lot of people is be very transparent with the rep and just tell them that you actually don't want to negotiate back and forth. But if you don't give me a good price, I'm going to have to go and look somewhere else. So save me time, make my life easier. Don't let me go and look somewhere else. Just prove me that I should work with you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really
interesting
good way of putting it too. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Why do you think people in general just intimidated to ask for a discount? Like you're lucky that you have your grandma.
Yeah. Yeah. She was great. I think financials in general are just sensitive, you know? Money is always like a very motivating factor in people's way of going about things, especially in business. So I think it's just maybe something that has to be approached respectfully. But also, sorry, Lily.
Part of the podcast.
Stop it.
Would she come on your lap? Like, would she sit on your lap?
I would let her. She absolutely would.
Let's do it.
So I guess, so what I've had to kind of just learn and accept over the years is that business is business. It's not a personal thing. It's my job, you know, and it's my job to do what's best for my practice, but also understand that I'm working within relationships where they're also doing what's best for them. So,
right.
Yeah, but it's not a personal thing. It's just, it can get that way, especially like just speaking about financials with, especially like the patient or the client that you're working with, that can be much more tricky to navigate. But when it's business to business, it's much easier to me. It's a lot less like, it's just what you do, you know? It's part of the job.
Can you, like, just last question on the subject, can you share, how do you manage the relationship when you say I think you said Dynaflex rep? Yeah. So it's like a decade-long relationship. What I heard, some doctors would build the relationship with their reps and they will go play golf or they would spend time together. And essentially that led to them never checking the price. And then I talked to one doctor and when I said, wouldn't you want to know how much you can save? He's like, I actually don't. Like, I'm terrified if I find out how much I could have saved and how much that relationship costed me. I better not to know because we're friends and now I'm planning to retire anyway. He's like, I don't want to know. Like, I honestly don't. And so to me, it's like very interesting. How do you build the relationship with a rep? And that's a decade-long relationship, but you know, it's, let me just put it this way, like it's a beneficial both ways.
Honestly, having these new practices on board have been not I don't know if eye-opening is the way to say it, but they've said, well, I can get that for this price from here, and I can get that for this price from here. And I'm like, okay, great, let's do it. Like, sign me up. Let's, but there's also, I mean, there's loyalty. So that might have something to do with it, where like with Dynaflex, part of the reason that we've always been like stuck with Dynaflex, or at least me anyways, is because, they always do their best to help and to make something better, or to like meet us in the middle, or do some like their customer service, I guess, is something that it's hard to find when you like, even with your team, like your team is very good about not only taking care of whatever comes up, but also being kind and like knowing that they have your best interests in mind. Like that's huge. That is huge. Because the other part of my job is I take the facility part, is I do all the ongoing maintenance and the repairs for things that come up with, you know, HVAC, curing lights, hand pieces, anything like painting, like all the little stuff that comes up. Finding somebody who's going to communicate, who's going to get the job done, follow up with me if something needs to happen. Like it just doesn't happen as often as you would think happens.
Right.
So
it's not as common.
Yeah. Loyalty is, I think, a huge part of the equation when you're considering like longevity of staying with the vendor and rep relations, things like that. Yeah. Dynaflex, I think there probably are times when we could get a better price with different vendors, but we've also played that game where we've ended a contract with some service, tried a new one, and it's either the same or worse. And it's, you wish you wouldn't have like ended the contract at that point. But
yeah. Did you ever go back to the vendor that you ended a contract with?
Yeah. Yep. Just recently, actually.
Yeah. What did you say? What's the first thing you tell the person?
Well, some of it was just a practicality. It was like a security and fire inspection services where we had this alarm panel in one location that could only be serviced by one specific vendor. So
yeah, that's annoying.
It is. That specific vendor ended up, we're like, hey, we're just going to do everything through you since we have to go with you. So we'll just switch everything to you. Well, it was awful. Like their infrastructure of their company was, none of them communicated with each other. We tried to get an address, like I think it was a zip code or a city changed or something. We had to talk to 4 different people just to get an address corrected. They overlapped in their services. So somebody would come say they're doing, like, it was a train wreck. And so finally we got the alarm panel. I don't know, something broke and we needed to get it replaced. And I was like, let's get a different one that we don't have to be serviced by this person or this specific vendor. And then when that happened, we just went back to the previous servicer because they were,
better,
good enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it happens. And I just said, hey, we had some changes internally where we've ended up ending this contract here. So we'd like to resume services with you again. And they were happy to oblige.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Out,
But it's always an interesting conversation because you can see, like it happened to us a couple times with Zen, like where I'm constantly watching expenses. Like I never let a credit card statement go without me looking at it.
Sure.
And then once in a while I would change services and I have to go back, and this look in the rep's eyes, like I knew you're going to come back. And I look at and I'm like, I think I know what you're thinking. And they're like, mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, good for you. Just don't get too arrogant about it. Like, let's keep going. So,
yep.
Things happen. Right. That's awesome. Amanda, when you signed up, I remember the confidence in your eyes about the implementation. It's just for some reason, we have offices that sign up and they'd be like, we're a group of 10. Let's start with 1. Let's see how it goes. And then we'll add all the rest of them. And we kind of get used to it. I wouldn't say that working with DSOs is our niche. I
Sure.
think it's like we just take each individual office individually and we work with each office individually. But we kind of seen how it happens with DSOs, and it's kind of that model. And then when I talk to you, you're like 15 or 12 at that time. I'm like, sure? Like how you're like, no, yeah, there's no way back. Like, let's go. What do we need?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I talked to my team, I'm like, Amanda is going to be awesome. So let's make sure we support. We're onboarding all 12 at the same time. So we need to make sure we back it up from our standpoint. And everybody on the team is like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. But are you sure that they actually going to pull through? I'm like, I trust Amanda. Let's go. So I'm curious, how did you get the team on board? Like how'd you do the implementation?
It's a little hard to remember. I think it's tricky to get time where we can all be together. I think I ended up just doing a big training session with all of them. And then I didn't make them do the required and the
on hand.
Yeah, the required and on hand amounts right off the bat. I gave them a few months to kind of get their feet wet and place a few orders and get a little bit more familiar with the software before we started using that level. But yeah, I mean, it's a really nice software. So I found it kind of simple to just say, hey, these are the things we need. Or when you guys set it, I can imagine all the setup on the back end was probably a lot when we first got started, and you guys, I thought, did a great job. So it was, I think I did a lot of the initial organization, which I love. That's just I'm a weirdo like that. I like organizing and keeping things, like finding how something is supposed to fit and making it efficient. Like I enjoy things like that for whatever reason. So I did a lot of the initial setup. And then I showed the staff how to use it, gave them some, different suggestions. Like I never really I don't want to micromanage them. I have an expectation if they're not meeting that. And there was a few things along the way where I kind of had to,
massage it a little more.
Yeah. Change things and just within our staff. But, yeah, it's a learning curve. And honestly, our staff is probably set up for changes a lot and they just kind of go with it. So that's maybe a positive element of the way our practice has always been. Like whether in 2017, we changed our charting software over. So we had a whole new computer system to use and had like a 2-3 day training, and then you just jump in and you learn and you ask questions and you call customer service and you figure out the best way to get something done, or you troubleshoot yourself, or then you call somebody. Like you just roll with it and you learn.
Yeah.
And it's how
That's not common in dentistry.
Yeah, I guess you're probably right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People don't like change, and primarily in dentistry, they don't like change.
Yeah, you're probably right. Because we do visits. We try to like have relationships with general dentists and referring doctors and things like that. So when we stop over in other offices, you see one that's been stuck in the same couple of decades ago, and they're like they're still doing a good job and getting things done, but they're a little bit behind the times. So I can see why you would say that very much. But yeah, Dr. Bubon has always been very forward thinking, where he has this mentality where if you're not growing and you're not changing, you're dying basically. And he's never been okay with that. So he's always very much wanting to implement new and better, efficient ways of doing things and getting things done. So that's kind of been the culture of our practice, I think, where it's just natural, So.
That's amazing. I think you can teach a course on that, just that alone. Because I feel like what we've noticed, ortho offices are slightly different compared to GPs.
Sure.
In a way that they're accustomed to change. They're accustomed to speed and pace of the office. So like if I talk to a dental assistant who was an ortho, they will have a little different mentality. I'm not saying a better or worse. It's just different.
Sure.
Right? It's
it is very pace. Different. Yeah.
Yeah. And so and this ability to change is probably unique to you guys, because it's just not happening often enough. You know, a lot of people still use EagleSoft, the Dentrix, for example, GPs, simply because, like, why change? And
Sure.
the phrase that I absolutely hate the most is the great is evil of good, or what's the phrase? Do you know that?
I do, but I don't know if I could repeat it.
Yeah, it's something like that. Like, and I just no.
Good is the enemy of great. Good enough is the enemy of greatness, or something along those lines.
Yeah, something along those lines, right? So
Yeah.
we're like, no, you should constantly change and try, and like, it's good enough. Why change? No, absolutely not.
Or
And
the way
actually,
this
to
is
that
just the way
point,
we've always done it, you know.
oh yeah, that's the way we've done it. Okay, interesting. Let's see where that's going to lead us.
Yeah.
I think I was super happy a couple of weeks ago when a new person that's joined the team came after an interview with one of my oldest person on the team. Right. So, like, the oldest, I mean, like the tenure, like how long they've been with Zen. And so, and the person we're talking, she's like, I was told that the one thing that's guaranteed at Zen is the change. Like, there's one constant at Zen, is constant change. I'm like, are you ready for that? Because, like, we change course all the time.
Yeah.
And you know, like, I remember this specifically. We've had employees that at the exit interviews, they would really bash me for this. Like, they would say, like, if Tiger would just stop changing things and changing his mind and all that, we're probably going to be more successful. And now looking back, we're 7 years, maybe, but maybe we wouldn't be alive. Maybe. Yeah. Right. So, like, I do give a lot of credit to Dr. Bubon for that, because it takes courage to like do that and not being afraid. And then it also takes a solid team by your side. You know, like I always say, like, if I come to my team and I say, I want to sell chicken McNuggets on a corner of the 6th Street in Guadalupe in Austin, I don't want to hear, like, debates. What I want to see from my team is, like, all right, how many pounds do we buy? And as we go through this process, through your questions, we're going to get to the truth of, like, do I actually need it? But if the first reaction is like, why would we do that? It's like, you're not the right person on my team.
Sure. That's valid. No, and he's probably learned a lot over the years of, like, what's something that he needs to bring to the table of discussion and what's something that he's implementing regardless of the response. So he's usually pretty good about his delivery on those things that he's like, we're doing this. I don't care if you don't want to, we're doing it, figure it out. Like, but yeah, it's, you pick your battles when it comes to, like, you know, how to make things happen. He does, I will say, he does, if I can speak for myself, he's got a great team.
That's awesome.
I just say that to say, like, he's got staff that have been with him for a very long time.
And that's a big tell. That's a big marker to say that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and they know him. He knows them. They know how to get things done. There's certain, like, probably certain personality traits in staff members that are able to have that kind of longevity with the practice, that he knows when he sees that he wants to have good retention with those employees, and he does what he needs to make sure that they stick around.
Yeah. Let's just stick here for a second, because I think it's such a good conversation. The context behind staying long with the company. If it's a one person, well, you probably just luck. You know, maybe the person was so good and your relationship with the person was so good as a boss and an employee, and maybe somehow you manage that. If it's across the entire team, if the average time to stay with the team is, like, let's just say the business is 10 years old and the average time is like 7 or 8, right? When you're pushing really that high limit, that is not just luck. That is the conversation with each individual person to say, are you growing? Are you making enough? Do you feel challenged enough? Maybe you should try different positions within the team. Maybe your salary is not where it needs to be. Let's see how we can get you there. and on and on. And it's a constant conversation to make sure that that person stays. It's not just, oh, great, she loves working at my company X and I got lucky. It's that constant conversation and working with each individual team member to make sure that they're staying. Would you agree with that? Like, do you think that's what's happening?
You brought up an interesting, I can't remember if the exact verbiage was like, are you being challenged enough? But I think that's a big, at least for me, I don't know. I guess I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know that I need a certain level of like, just stimulation in my job where I need to be thinking and wanting and engaging in activity of some sort. I don't want to just like be a drone. You know what I mean? Like I like being busy. I like having a diverse plate of responsibility, I guess. And I think that's part of like what's worked for me staying here. Cause every 6 or 8 months, something is changing. And it's been good, or maybe I shouldn't say every 6 or 8 months, maybe big things are every year or two or something like that. But the level of engagement that I need to bring to the table is, I don't know, part of what I think has been good for me and staying here. But yeah, I think as long as you're willing to, like, it's probably better when you're in a smaller, like if you have a smaller team, because Dr. Bubon has, I think, 60 staff members now. And he is good about staying personal, but he's also had to train his leadership to be more engaging with the staff, that he can't have like a one-on-one sit down with every single person, you know? So he's had to like create positions. And honestly, some of that has been staff driven. Like our staff have said, we need this. We have to start implementing some more infrastructure into the practice, or we're not, like, this has to be a part of how we move forward. Having a flow chart of like, you go to this person for when this happens, or you go, if you need this, then you go to this person, like having that internal organization of support and just organization in general. So there's not 3 different people that are taking care of the same thing, you know? But yeah, I mean, I think it's 2 parts, where there's like the business end of taking pride in what you do and having a good fit of responsibility to that specific person. And then also being appreciative of knowing that your staff is working hard to keep your practice and your baby that you've raised from when you graduated from orthodontic school to keep going and keep thriving and keep growing and things like that. So but I think he's done a decent job of like listening to the staff and making sure that their employment needs are met, as well as like salary and things like that. So yeah, it's probably a very challenging position to be in as a boss, because it's like
and it takes a special person.
Paying someone for a job, but yeah.
I always go back to this. It's like, you know, when some of my friends, because I have my business, a lot of times my close friends that are running their businesses too, just happen to be that way. And sometimes, not a lot, you hear these questions. Like, I had this person interview, and you wouldn't believe how much they want. To me, it's like this question, I get it, but it's up to you.
Yeah.
Like, how big of a problem you're trying to solve, right? And a lot of times, like, that's the disadvantage of a single location private office is, and that's my next question to you would be in that sense. Like for Dr. Bubon, having the structure and having the challenge, but also knowing, like, you want $45 an hour, let's figure out what do you need to do to be able to make that money so that the business can afford that. There's certain responsibilities, certain plates that you need to take on. And so when people start looking at it that way, it's just a little different. I always say, like, what we're missing in dentistry, it's specifically related to dental assistant. And that's something that I really want to work at some point, maybe not right now, but I'm very, very passionate about it, is if we want the private offices to survive, and just in general, any office to survive, the dental assistant is a key role. Like I always say, you can open a dental office without an office manager and without a hygienist, but you cannot open an office without a doctor and a dental assistant. You just can't, in my opinion, right? So if the dental assistant is such a critical role, there should be a track for the dental assistant to grow. And ideally, there should be two, where you separate from an individual contributor to the people manager. So meaning, like, at some point, your dental assistant gets to a fork where they can either become a really good individual contributor, meaning you take this dental assistant with you to the implant courses, ortho courses, sleep apnea courses, and on and on and on and on. And that assistant becomes your right wing, like literally helping you in every procedure, that you become so much faster. Now you can do 10 implants a day versus one, because everything is streamlined, right? Can that assistant make then $45 an hour? I bet you can. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's how much I think it would take a very open-minded individual to have that type of dynamic in their practice, but I see a huge value in that, because it's like you have another little mini provider that's helping you be more efficient, get more done, help more people, bring in more production, you know?
Exactly.
I only see positives, but it takes a person who is relational and willing to bring in another set of eyes to their job, you know, which is
right.
Good. But yeah.
And let's talk about the second track, the people manager, because I feel like in every office, there's always this dynamic. We got this amazing dental assistant, and now we're going to make her lead assistant. And now she's going to be in charge of ordering. She's going to be in charge of all the other assistants. But what if that same lead assistant that you have, or that really incredible Susan, she's actually much better assisting you on the implants? But there's somebody out there like Tiffany, she's much better at managing people. She's probably not the best at assisting you with implants, but she can manage your orders. She can make sure that all your assistants know what needs to be done and how to turn over the rooms. She can actually time it. She'll be so excited standing with a stopwatch and be like, let's make sure, like, let's run a competition. Right? Exactly. 2.5 minutes. Let's make it happen. Let's go. Right? So like it's two completely different mindsets. And now if you have that champion in your back office, who's a true lead assistant, meaning she's the people manager, can she make $45 an hour? I bet you can, because you can't survive without the person. And so now all of a sudden you create a track of constantly like feeding all these positions. The only challenge I think then you have is if you don't have a second or third or fourth office, is you're capping. Then at some point, what do? Because you need the new people to come in and go through the tracks. I don't know. Like, that's my question to you. Like, what do you do if you're a single office?
Yeah. I mean, that's probably why Dr. Bubon has just continued to grow, because he doesn't want to get stuck and stagnant, because that's, to him, it's not thinkable, you know? But yeah, I mean, it's really, really valid, really good points. And that's, I think, another thing, we haven't gotten super deep into this, but for a little while, I think we hired a consultant who was, she did a little bit of like personality training, where she kind of gave some psychology background and brought that to the table, of showing like what kind of people you're working with, how to best communicate with them. And then when you know each other and how to communicate well with each other, what are finding those people's strengths so that they're fit into a position that they're going to be best suited for. And not like somebody was hired for this position and that's what they're hired for and that's what they do, but they really could be great in another role, or, you know, you got to learn people, and then you've got to find their strengths and keep like building that into like your approach to staff retainment and things like that. But that's a fascinating, psychology is one of the most fascinating things to me. I love studying, like,
I love that too,
things like that. But it's a whole new world.
And I'm always excited about it. What would you recommend to a doctor who is hopefully self-aware, right? Let's just cross our fingers that our doctors are self-aware out there, and they know that they don't have that thing in their body to be good with people. They're good with procedures, right? So like they can predict every procedure, but when the staff member comes and she's like, I'm getting married, like you can tell by the look on the doctor, like, holy guacamole, I'm about to lose this person. They can't even comprehend the happiness that they need to show to the person. Be like, I'm so excited for you. This is great. I want to meet your husband. No, they're like,
yeah. And
that's my favorite dental assistant, who I'm paying $21 an hour, $22 an hour. So, oh my God, like, what would you recommend? Like, how does that work?
I mean, if you're self-aware, hopefully you can either get some personal coaching or hire somebody who can help on the personal level of it, you know. That's on the crux of being self-aware, because every human has the ability to improve their own self, their mindset, their approach, their way of relating with people, as long as you can see a person and internalize, process, and apply like what you're experiencing. The guy that's very detail oriented and procedurally like minded can be a relational person on some, it just takes years, years and years for them to actually like hone those skills in and like implement them into their life. But I mean, if they can't, if they're not, then hopefully they would know or have somebody tell them to hire a person that's good at like, oh my gosh, you're getting married. That's amazing. Tell me what you need. Are you hopefully going to stay? Like if there's something that with your job or your employment that we can start to kind of navigate through to make sure that you're still happy here, like don't just, don't assume they're going to leave, but then also know that their life is changing and like your job may have to change with it if you can keep them, that's a tricky one to speak to as far as like advice would go, because I've never been in that position, but
right.
Yeah, it is interesting though. Like, and it's so funny because a lot of doctors are, well, I guess I shouldn't say a lot. Usually scientific people are really meticulous and like detail oriented, like
precision.
You're saying, and maybe not so on the emotional, relational end of things. We have the whole array of doctors in our practice. So that's what makes me like retract my statement of
right.
They're all meticulous, but no, it's an interesting dynamic because they all have their different ways of relating with the staff. And that's, I mean, it's interesting. I think the practice has changed a lot to the point where the veteran staff that are here are, I mean, I don't see things, life changes, like people move on or like something will happen where a veteran will like,
people have kids.
Yeah, something like that. But it's different now with the younger staff. I don't know how to say, like newer staff coming on board. It's like a different mindset, a different.
How so?
You were talking about, sorry about that, wages before.
Yeah.
And whoever's response it was like, you can't believe what they're asking for. Like the generation coming up is just a different animal, I think. I just shouldn't say it like that, but there's a different mindset. They've been through different things. They've seen the results from the generations before them. And it's just, there's a different mindset now. That the world has changed dramatically in the last 5-10 years. And I think it's just different now. And I think that's there's a not a conflict, but a different, maybe a breakdown in perception, where the doctors and the practice owners and managers who have been in it for 10-20 years and the younger ones coming in and asking for whatever salary or hourly wage that they're asking that they think they deserve or should be owed right off the bat is just, it's different. And I can see how there would be some level of conflict, or like if the owner sees that as like an audacious request or something along those lines. But
what they call it, sense of entitlement.
Yeah. But there's also something to be said for people like understanding that they're bringing a trade to the table. And if you know that they're actually going to work hard and be of value to the practice and an asset, then absolutely they're worth it. But we've actually, I can't remember the name of it. We've hired, like anybody that applies to the practice goes through a very intense interviewing process. And I even think they have to, what's the word? Consent to like a background check. And like, it's thorough. It's very thorough.
Awesome. Yeah.
From what I hear, I was basically,
You're like, I'm lucky I didn't have to go through it.
no, my interview was in a coffee shop. So it's a little different now, but yeah, we have a really, really kind of intense, vetting process for people that are applying and coming on board. And I think even just hearing, so when we do hire somebody, we have like a little intro email to all the staff because because that's the best way to communicate things nowadays. But they write a little like, hey, I'm really happy to be on the team. And it's very different, but I think they've really started to try to show the value to having an employee that's not just punching a clock and not just there to like get a paycheck. You know, they want somebody who takes pride in their work and somebody who's going to be part of a team and have that mindset of like, I'm bringing myself to the table so that we can be better collectively. Like that's, and it's the interviewing process, I think, is so tricky because everybody's bringing their A game, you know, and they're wordsmithing the best responses to any questions that might come up. And they're, you know, it's a little hard to tell what you're getting before you actually like see them in action. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a different, I think the employment onboarding process is just changing very rapidly. And I don't think, I don't know. It's just hearing things that I hear, it just is changing. I don't know. Like people need jobs, but employers want valued employees and it's hard to know what you're getting. So yeah, it's a complicated issue, I think, but yeah. Interesting.
Just to piggyback on what you said, I think the generational, you can't imagine a dental office where everybody that's working there right before retirement, right? So like, what are you going to do? Like, it's just, I can't even imagine that environment because what, are you going to sell that? How are you going to sell that? Right? It's just so it's difficult. So ideally, what you're probably going to see is an environment where you have like representation of all generations, right? Somebody's about to retire, somebody just entering the workforce, somebody is right in the middle, somebody in the middle, but kind of less encouraged because they're going through that midlife crisis, so to speak. And so, and that dynamic creates that melting pot of ideas and melting pot of how to move this forward for the ones that are upcoming, the ones that are retiring. They could share stuff. And I don't know where I'm going with this but to me, it's like, that's the beauty of that mixed work environment.
Yeah.
Because as long as everybody get along, as long as everybody, lately it's been hard because there's a lot of, how do you call it? A lot of baggage that people bring to work. It used to be like, you just come to work and you just do the work and you work as a team to get to the goal. But lately it became a family, which I have always fought with the doctors that I talk to and I work with. If they say, well, my team is like my family, I'm like, that sucks. Like that, I wouldn't want to work for you. You're like, what do you mean? Like, I love it. I'm like, no, that means like you create this sense of entitlement. You can't fire them. She's like, what do you mean? We fire people. Then it's a team because you don't fire your family members. And then it gets, they're like, oh yeah, then they are my team. Yeah. You can't call your team your family. Like you can't say, I love my team. You can't say you love, but you love your child. You love your wife. You love your husband. You love your dog. But it's like, I respect my team members. You know, like if I say I love my team members, maybe it's just a different meaning to me. Like that word is so strong to me where maybe somebody that's been with me for 10 years and we've gone through thick and thin. Then maybe I can say that, oh my God, I just love that girl so much because we've been through a lot. But just like to say that I love my entire team and this is my family, and it just puts so much responsibility and so much delusion.
Yeah, I think it's probably a difference in understanding or maybe a level of vulnerability. I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, like a family probably means different things to different people. Yeah. So yes, but I think it's supposed to be like a mindset of like, we're here for each other. We care about each other. We're loyal to each other. We're together. We are a team, a close knit team. But yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying about their family and a work environment or a team environment is, to me, two different things. But yeah.
It might be also like the difference in generations, because like we could go for hours about this topic, but just like give you a 2-second perspective on this. I know a person in dentistry. I can't call him my friend because we have way too different values. Like I think we're acquaintances. And we talk about kids, and I have a 3-month-old, and he's like, my son is my best friend. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like, how old is your son? He's like, he's 4. And then I'm thinking, so first of all, how screwed up your life should be that you just simply don't have friends. Because I have friends, like, and I don't want to call my daughter my best friend, because I really have incredible friends.
Yeah.
And there are things that I would never tell my daughter just because I'm a parent, but I will tell my friends, and we can have a laugh. Right. Yeah. So that's like one. Number 2 is like, it's just so much responsibility that you're putting on your kid. I want my kid to be my kid, and I want to be a parent. I don't want to be best friend to my kid. And maybe I'm just looking at it the wrong way, and maybe I need some psychological help.
No,
but it's just like, that's how I think.
Yeah, I would probably be closer to your approach or perception of that too, where like I mean, kids aside, a business and a family are two vastly different things. And you can say you want to have like a warm, caring dynamic within your team of people, but families are very complex, very complex things. And I get that might have some sort of like resemblance in a work team, but it's still a vastly different dynamic. Yeah. I know it's probably, I think there's probably some people that are very like, being accurate with your words and correct with your words is probably more important to other people, or some people, than other people. Whereas like they can use something to define a thing, or to explain a thing that maybe isn't that accurate, or maybe they just haven't processed what they define a certain thing as. But yeah, it has kind of taken there's a trend in saying family atmosphere. I actually saw it was on some social media platform, but it was some joke about a business calling their work team a family, and like just how cringy and like uncomfortable that was on the other end of things. But yeah, no, it's there's a lot of perspective that you could take from one end or the other on how to view that.
Yeah. All right, let's change gears, because this is the subject we could spend a lot of time on.
Too long.
I want to go back very quick before we start wrapping up. You're launching Zen in all of your offices. Maybe between Dr. Bubon and your team, what was the one misconception before you launched and before it got implemented?
That it was a magic pill. There is no I'm if we want to talk life perceptions, I don't think that perfection exists, and I actually think there's beauty when things aren't perfect. I think it's much, I don't know. So when you're implementing something new, a lot of times you think like, this is going to be the answer to all our problems. This is going to be perfect, efficient, everything's going to go smoothly and great. And that's just not reality. Like there's no, with anything in life, there's no magic pill that is, perfectly efficient, easy in every way. And there's always going to be challenges that come up. And it's just understanding that in the moment of something like not being ideally perfect, that it's okay. Like we're going to work through it. If this isn't what we expected, or if this isn't like the easiest way of going about something, then we're going to figure out how we can do it, what our options are, and then what works best for us. And that's what we're going to do and what we're going to get used to, So I guess there's
no magic pill.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's I don't know. I'm just trying to think of like when we implemented it. I think it was probably I was super excited about it more so than the rest of the staff because I was doing all of the legwork of placing orders with individual vendors and all the different ways of actually placing orders. So to me, it was more of like just a huge relief. So I don't know if the staff really got all of that because they weren't doing all of that. But yeah, just knowing, keeping in mind that anytime change comes or you change gears and try something new, there's going to be things that you have to like, having expectations and understanding that you're going to have to change your expectations as you figure out how to navigate through the change, you know?
I think I'm going to write a title for this podcast right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So did Zen affect your relationship with vendors in any way? Good or bad?
Yeah, there's a little less of the personal, like the one rep with Dynaflex, Lori, we usually, if I do email or something now, she's like, I've missed you. How have you been? Tell me everything that's new. Like we don't interact quite as much anymore, but the ones that we do have like a better relationship, we do check-ins and we keep up with each other and make sure that we're like, our business relationship is where it needs to be. And if there's something that needs to be addressed, or if we have like a specific situation that we need to talk about, they're always available. So it's been fine. There's just a little bit less of that. Like I don't have to email separately every time I need to order. So
yeah. So it's less of the order management. It's actually the relationship management.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah. That's amazing.
I thought it was good. Yeah.
What would you recommend to offices that on board with Zen? Like, what would be your recommendation?
I don't know. I think it's a relief. So I guess just being patient with getting your inventory set is probably what would be, because and this is probably different from practice to practice. I'm more on the vein of like, I want to have specific products that we know we like and we can get every time, as opposed to like, oh, let's try this or let's try that. If you're just trying something different every time, then that's easy. But if you're trying to find specific products and making sure that we got this, but we didn't like it, making sure that that's not in your inventory if you're not going to want to order it again, or just keeping on top of like the organization of it, just to be patient with that. And it's different if you just have one practice, that should be easy to keep on top of. But like in my situation, it's a little bit different when I have 5 different providers that use different materials for this or that, and making sure that we have available to them what they want. And yeah, and then I guess I'm probably a little bit more unique to this also, where the staff that go through the inventory in the clinics, they never really had to like look for items. So they don't know how to like search for, if one of the doctors wants something, they don't necessarily know how to find what they're looking for. Whereas that's more like, I grew up on that, so it's a little different learning curve depending on the experience of your staff. So, but all teachable, all learnable things, and your staff, exactly. I'll say like usually reps of vendors are really good about this, where if you say, hey, I need something like this, can you recommend a product? They're good about it. But as far as your staff goes and getting things into the accounts or in different storages, like Lana on the chat is amazing. She's wonderful. So sweet, so responsive, very on her game. Like I like that girl a lot. And then awesome. I know I have Anastasia and Delaney that kind of help manage my account specific, and anytime I email them, they respond right away. Like your staff, I don't know what training you go through with your staff, but I think it's like a huge, a huge positive to understanding that Zen staff and customer service is top. Like they're just always ready to help and always ready to make things how they need to be to get the job done. So
that's amazing.
Just reach out.
I'll cut that final piece. I'll send it to my team.
Okay.
They'll love it. They will love that feedback.
Well,
Awesome. Amanda, yeah, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to take more of your time.
Good. Yeah.
This was great. I'll maybe we'll do a round 2 at some point in the future, because I love the conversation, and maybe we can go on some of these deeper, more technical questions over psychology and stuff.
I'll have to read up on business and economy and the behavior of the new generations coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be good though. Yeah. Let me know if you ever need anything. All right.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah. You have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.